Good to see you guys here. All right, so guys, as you are starting to warm up and just settle in on this Saturday evening, going to first quickly introduce my very special guest for today, Shuchi Pandya. Hey, double back to you,
I know. It's been so long.
boomeranging back twice the amount of love. So Shuchi Pandya, as most of you know, is the founder of People Bella. In a quick span of 10 years, Shuchi has grown People Bella, and I've seen her journey from the very start to where she's managed to get it now. So firstly, Shuchi, congratulations to you. It's been an incredible journey. She
I
is
love you. You've been amazing in all the conversations we've had as well. So
uh,
you've been part of it.
I've learned from every conversation I've had with you. I've been the one on the receiving end, just so that you know. I have learned a tremendous amount from you with every conversation. So
No,
uh,
it's been both ways for sure. So thank
these
you.
guys
Yeah,
are in for a real treat. I think they have no idea what they're in for. So I'm really excited to have you on the show. So guys,
same
as
here.
you know, in 10 years, Shuchi has reached a number one spot in 10 categories across her line in jewelry. What she did is tapped into the youth and figured out that they really were looking for low price jewelry but extremely fashionable. And I'm not going to get into her business and spoil it for you. I'm going to let her just talk about her strategy with People Bella. She was also nominated for top 25 startups in Singapore and also won an award by Google. In addition to running People Bella, she also has an adorable daughter. And while she does imitation jewelry, when she speaks, she's actually very real. So you guys are in for some real learnings from her in this next 60 minutes. So, Shuji, without much ado, first question over to you. Um, just walk me through the journey. I know you went to Bombay International School, and then
Yep.
university and all that. So just sort of tell us about your early years. What were you like as a kid, and tell us the journey.
Sure. I grew up in Bombay in a family of jewelers. So I think business was always ingrained in my
Okay,
blood.
it was a family of jewelers. Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, jewelry kind of runs in my blood. It's one of those things that like walking out of the house without jewelry on. My dad would just look at me like, "What is wrong with you?" But I grew up in a family of jewelers. Business was always something I knew that I would get into. So unlike a lot of families where, you think about the medical profession or the legal profession, or you just think about, what your interest is, I always knew for me it was business. And as a kid, I was really studious. I mean, I was very like, academic oriented. In fact, I was actually not street smart at all. I just focused largely on getting good grades, getting into a good school, getting into a good college. And very, very much by the book. But somewhere along the lines, maybe in my mid 20s, I started hitting a wall, right? And I think a lot of people in their mid 20s get to that stage where you start questioning what you're doing. And I was working in my family business at the time. And really my interest was much more around, doing something for the young generation of India, and I was seeing that in my own taste and sensibilities and my own ability to find something in India for myself and my friends. There was just really nothing there. So I just kept thinking, I want to do something. And there was this itching feeling that there's an opportunity to tap into a different segment of jewelry. So my family, by the way, was into fine jewelry, right? So this is very different. So then I decided to go to Wharton and do my MBA. I actually randomly even applied. I think MBA for me was not on the charts because, again, as if, when you come from a family business, you don't think MBA, right? You just think
Right.
like, like how can you make the next big deal? And so I said, okay, I'm going
But
to take a break.
so going into the MBA, did you know you wanted to be an entrepreneur, or did you think you would sort of go and experiment, or
Yeah, I mean, I knew that I would eventually become an entrepreneur, but I did keep an open mind. I said, you know what, maybe, this is an opportunity for me to reset. And maybe if I'm back in the US and I did my undergrad in the US as well at NYU Stern. So that was again very business. And I said, maybe if I go back to the US, I can look at opportunities where, I can learn something new, right? Because when you hit that wall in your
yeah,
20s, you kind of I was kind of almost pushed to reset and start from scratch. And so then I did. I kept a super open mind. I tried everything from I went to like all these information sessions on PE and VC fund, like VC firms, and I even did like iBanking info
Oh,
sessions,
wow.
like
Okay.
everything, right? Like I was like, let me
Okay.
just see where this goes.
Sure.
And I think after 2 years, my heart was still in entrepreneurship. So it
Okay.
brought me back to where my roots were. And that's when I decided to come back. And between my first and second year, I interned at another jewelry company in the US called Stella and Dot. And
Mhm.
Stella and Dot is large VC funded startup in San Francisco, and they did a lot of imitation jewelry, and they had a
This,
very
this
interesting
was
business
your
model.
internship while at business
This was
school?
my
Okay.
internship. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And I then came back to India during my summer as well, and I did some, quick tests on like, a quick pilot as well in terms of, if I wanted to start my own thing, like, what was the market like. And I think the good thing about business school is that you develop all these toolkits, right? Like you
Right.
develop all these frameworks and you study them, and you kind of you have this insane amount of resources available to you, so you can literally like take an idea and bounce, like email your professor about it, and he or she will give you like five different ways to think about that problem, which like honestly you don't get if you're just an entrepreneur trying to make it, right? So
Hmm.
being in business school and trying to start a company was fantastic. I was knocking on doors of professors, trying to run them by my business ideas, and I even took a couple of classes on business, on entrepreneurship in general, like areas where I felt I was lacking. Like I took a venture capital class, for example, and all those things really
Oh,
helped, I think, in the
okay. So you
in the larger.
streamlined the MBA experience towards
Yeah, yeah.
entrepreneurship. Okay. You really
Yes, I
tapped
did. So
into all the resources at Wharton, huh? Wow.
in
Okay.
my second year, yeah,
In your
because
second
I
year.
think
Okay.
by this after my summer, I pretty much knew I was going to go back, and so I decided that okay, now it's time for me to take advantage. I have 1 year to take advantage of all these resources that Wharton's given or Wharton has, and I did. I think I really sort of explored all the different. Now they have a lot more, but back then,
Sure.
even then it was very different. And we did things like we would like there was a company called Rent the Runway, and a
Right.
bunch of other startups. It's actually started by a bunch of HBS alum as
Yeah.
well, all based out of New York. And being in Philly, I would drive down to New York, and through the Wharton network, I would get opportunities to talk to the founders.
Oh,
And,
wow.
and so these are the things that I think really exposed me, because I think the US at the time and even still is going through a very it's very different, right? It's like they have a very evolved way of looking at business models.
Mhm.
And so I said, can I look at some of these business models and see what could be applicable in the Indian
In
context?
India. Okay.
Yeah, and e-commerce at the time was very new, and I had no tech background whatsoever. I
Hmm.
only knew jewelry, and I said, let me see what I can do, on the tech front. And Flipkart and Amazon had not even entered when I came back,
Sure.
and Flipkart was very young. They're definitely not at the level they were. Myntra kind of picked up around 2012, 2013. So. In general, e-commerce was, I would say, at its very early stages when I moved
Okay.
back in 2012. So the first couple of years was very bootstrapped. We had pretty much just my own savings that I put into the business, and I said, let me try and see where this goes. And we were very organic. The one good decision we made was we hired a really good PR agency, and it wasn't like a fancy PR agency. It was actually just a bunch of two girls who were also very entrepreneurial. I mean, they were just starting up, and they wanted to prove themselves, and as a result, it was amazing, because they were working hard to promote our brand, and it was a kind of we were both feeding off of each other with this entrepreneurial energy that we both
Sure.
shared. And that really helped. I think PR at an early stage of a startup really helps, because you don't have much money to advertise, you don't have much money to get a celebrity on board. But if you can get a PR agency who can put you in touch with the right connects, I think for a brand it's really critical.
Okay,
So
so
that,
just to get
yeah,
it right, so you used the Wharton MBA to sort of flesh out your startup. Did you
yeah.
end up graduating Wharton knowing that this was it? Like you'd be in the e-commerce space and retailing jewelry?
No, no. So I just
Okay,
knew I'd be in jewelry, right? I just
in
said,
jewelry.
okay,
Okay,
I had this vision that I wanted to target. It was a very simple vision. I said that, look, I
okay,
think women need jewelry that's affordable. I think that the options out there are limited, and it's a very disorganized sector, and it still
okay.
remains a very disorganized sector. So can I just convert it into an organized format? So that was a
Okay.
very simple
So,
goal that I
so that
had.
was your thesis. You realize that
Yeah,
the market's disorganized. You realize there's a
yeah,
need for this sort of product, and you
yeah,
realize that there's some need for disruption because there's no one really doing
yeah.
what you do. Okay, so that was the
Exactly.
basic premise of
That
starting
was the
out.
basic premise. And we started off not with e-commerce. We started off with very organically just selling, but we hired a bunch, or hired, but we kind of developed or created a network of influencers. At that time, influencers were not as, it wasn't as institutionalized as it is today. So influencers who were bloggers, who were upcoming bloggers, we partnered with them. We got them to talk about our brand with their friends, to host trunk shows and things like that, and
Okay.
build the brand very organically. And it wasn't
Okay, so
actually until
it
2000.
did not start up as an e-commerce venture.
No, no. For the first
Okay.
2.5 years, we were very like on the ground, and I think that was great
Okay.
because I was very involved at that level, at that stage. I got the opportunity to actually interact with customers, right? So it
Ah,
was a very
okay.
face-to-face interaction that we had,
Hmm.
which I think e-commerce can sometimes create that barrier. And so I had that opportunity to talk to a lot of customers, learn
Okay.
about what was selling, what was not, etc.
Okay.
And
Before we jump more into people, Bella, I have a question here from Komal619, who asks, did your undergrad help you more than your postgrad? Do you have an answer to
um,
that? Like, how did the NYU undergrad sort of, was there any
I think
skill
it
building
helped
there?
me. So yeah, I tell you, I think where undergrad really helps, right? I don't think it helps you in concrete skills. I think where it helps you is broadening your mind, and,
Okay.
and and that's a muscle I think that you really need to exercise when you're young, especially when you're in your late teens. Because I went to NYU, so being in New York was an amazing exposure for me.
Experience. Hmm.
Yeah, and I think that I had, I think by the end of my 4 years, I was um, the one muscle that I really, worked and reworked and kind of fine-tuned in my head was this muscle of curiosity, and
Sure.
wanting to always know more about something. And I
Hmm.
think living and being in sorry, I think I just
Yeah, but
yeah,
you're
sorry,
back.
there was a bit of a lag.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think curiosity is really important when you're young, and I think it's not important whether you do your undergrad in business or you do it in liberal arts. Just be in an environment and surround yourself with people where they push you to be open-minded. And secondly, I think also learning how to problem solve. And I don't mean problem solve in the sense of, like a consultant type of method,
Sure.
but, learning how to connect the dots between one situation and another. I think these
Okay.
are two areas where undergrad can really help.
So
Uh,
one was curiosity, and then the other was just sort of learning how to join the dots. And of
yeah,
course, being in New York, you were super exposed to like the whole big
yeah.
city, New York. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So
Sounds
I
good.
think that street smartness came in, right? With New York, like
Okay.
I think, like I told you earlier, I was very academic and I was
Right.
sheltered living in
Okay.
India. And New York really opened me up, and it opened up that whole sort of level of, oh, I can do this. So it built my
Sure.
confidence to that level, which
Sure.
I think is very critical. Business school was hardcore technical skills for me. It
Okay.
doesn't have to be for a lot of people, but for me, it was really about building very specific skills.
Okay. Cool. And then, you said you came back and for about 2 years or so, you're sort of doing these trunk shows, meeting your
Yeah.
consumer, trying to understand the customer and his mindset. In these 2 to 3 years, the initial phase, what are some of the biggest challenges we faced? We have a question here from Uf Mirchi who says, what were some of the major challenges while you were sort of growing organically in the beginning?
Yeah, I think that building a team is challenging,
Okay.
when you start a company, I think one of the things that you don't really know is what kind of people do you want to hire.
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, you don't know from the onset, like, okay, these are the people I need, and this
Right.
is the job description. Because frankly, for
Hmm.
example, like I didn't know if I needed a graphic designer full time or whether I could do with one part time.
Sure.
I didn't know
Because
if
you're
I
also sort
need
of managing your resources and team building.
you're managing your resources, and also frankly you don't know, you can't anticipate the level of work, right?
Sure.
So sometimes what you really need are just people who are willing to do everything. So you
Right.
need people who are self starters, you need people who are passionate, who don't say, oh no, this is not in my job description, right? And I think finding those kind of people is very challenging. I mean, you sit in an interview, you're an entrepreneur, right, Vibha? Like you sit
Right.
in an interview, you interview someone, you don't know if they have
Sure.
that passion, right, for or
Right.
that sort of zest for doing things, or for learning, right? Um,
Right.
so I think that was a challenge in the early days, and I think as you get more sophisticated in your entrepreneurial journey, and as you get bigger as well, that's when you start understanding, okay, this is important for me and that's important for me. So I think one of the big mistakes that we made, for example, was not so not, so, I mean, that seems like a really silly thing, but in the early days, I don't think we were very clear in our heads about what kind of people we wanted to hire. And
Sure.
I think if I had to take it back, take it, I think we could have, if there had been more clarity on that front, I think I would have been able to avoid certain recruiting mistakes, which I think ended up for me wasting my time, wasting my resources, wasting my effort, and I've been more efficient about it.
So for
Um,
someone who's looking to start a business, from the viewers here, and someone looking to just, set up their first initial team, what
yeah,
are some one or two pieces of advice that you'd like to share?
yeah. So I think when you're very early starting off, I think testing the market, like product market fit, I think it's a very business school word, product market fit. But
Sure.
what it essentially means is that you have a product and you have a consumer, and you have to ensure that they both like each other.
Hmm.
And it's like you're trying to match make two things that you've created, but you have to, in order to do that, you have to learn a lot about both of them, right? You have to learn a lot about the product, you have to learn a lot about the market. And I think that's where a lot of efforts should be going early on. I don't think, early on, startups often make the mistake of focusing a lot on fundraising, in the early days, or focus a lot on like the glitz and the glamour of
Sure.
the marketing front. But what you really need is there a fit?
Okay.
And there's a lot of nuance stuff that you can do around it.
So when you're
Yeah.
saying the fit, you mean in terms of like what is your product offering and what is the market looking for, and is there a match
Yes.
there?
Is
Okay.
there a match there? Yeah,
Okay.
and I think often, like you might, and it's not just like talking to one customer, right? You have to talk to 100 customers to really know that. When I say
Hmm.
market analysis, you have to really go out there and understand. Like for example, we went to the level of understanding. Okay, do our customers are they the kind of customers who go to the salon once a week and get their hair blow dried, or do they go and get their nails done?
Oh
Because
wow.
this is really important for us to understand, okay, are they looking more for earrings, or are they looking more for rings? If they're getting
Wow.
their nails done every week,
Wow.
then, they're most likely probably looking for rings to like show off their nails. And if you're getting your hair blow dry, then you probably want to like show off your earrings or your necklace. So I think just really understanding who the customer is, and then seeing, how the product can match
Hmm.
that customer, in my mind, is critical.
Okay. Wow. So it sounds sort of rudimentary and sounds sort of commonsensical, but a
Yeah.
lot of people just miss out on just figuring out product and consumer match, and that's something you realize that quite early on. I mean, doing that sort of detailed survey really, it's quite remarkable.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be fancy, right? We didn't have money to like recruit AC
Sure.
Nielsen to do this, right? I mean, we
Right.
basically like we were just I actually got like a bunch of my sister's friends in a coffee shop because they were my TG, and I said, "Hey guys, like I will give you free jewelry. Why don't you come
Mhm.
and talk to me for like an hour?" And I
Okay.
would sit with them, and I talked to them, and did that like 7 times over till I had reached out to about 50 guys, and I think it's very simple dipstick stuff. Doesn't have to be
Right.
fancy at all. in the early days, and it'll give you enough insight if you have the ability to, like I said, connect the dots and join the dots. It'll
Okay.
give you enough insight to start building something.
Okay. Mostly getting, her education, getting all the soft skills, the hard skills, the exposure, then coming back and then trying to assess the need in the market and then developing a product that sort of matched that need.
Yeah.
Um, what happens next? So, how did you go about then sort of building and scaling up the team?
Yeah, so in 2015, I raised my first round of funding, and that
Okay.
was pretty much my journey into the VC world. But also, I had committed to a path. I think and we've talked about this with her, right? Like we've talked about, should we get VC funding? Should we not get
Yeah.
VC funding? When you get external investors on board, you're basically committing to a path, and that path is that, hey, you no longer have a boss. I mean, you're no
Yeah.
longer your own boss. You have a boss now.
Yeah.
That boss is your investor.
Yeah.
And they have a reason why they've invested in you, because they think that they can make money from your business and your company, and they will want an exit. So that means that you have to drive the business in a direction that will eventually give them an exit. And what that essentially means is that you suddenly have growth targets, you have certain benchmarks and certain metrics that need to be tracked more regularly. And there are pros and cons to this whole path, right? The pros are that I think you can actually develop a lot of governance around the company, so you become a lot more disciplined about measuring certain aspects of the business and tracking them regularly, so that
Sure.
you're growing in a certain
Because
way.
those are the metrics your venture capitalist is also sort of mapping with you. So,
Exactly. So you sit every month with them and you map these metrics. So you're
sure.
kind of having these metrics in the back of your head. But then the con is that you are answerable to somebody, and you have to grow. You have to show that growth, and you have to prove yourself a lot more than
Hmm.
if you were just making this into like a lifestyle business.
Hmm.
And so you have to decide. And I think we took the decision that, look, this was it was now or never. I was young. I said, if if I have to, raise money, then let me do this and see, how I can realize the vision that I had for Pipabella into something bigger. So I raised my first round. It was a small equity. It was a small angel round. It was about,
Okay.
I think about $250,000. So maybe at that time around 1.2 crores or something.
Right. Yeah.
Not a whole lot. I mean, not like the millions that people are raising today, right? And that was actually when my journey into e-commerce began. And I think that it was fantastic because we brought tech. We hired a whole tech team, and we started pushing ourselves into the e-commerce world. So we
So
started
you
off
raised
by.
this money, and the first thing you did is you used the money to team build, basically. Is
Yeah,
that what you're saying?
yeah,
Okay.
yes, yes. So because I think tech was pretty clear that if I had to grow, then I couldn't rely on this whole trunk show model, which was
Sure.
very organic and things like that. So I had to have some sort of
Okay. So you
diverse.
raise the money and you say, okay, we got to scale. If we're going to raise money, venture capitalist looking for return on his capital.
Yeah,
For this sort of ROI, you need scale. If you need
yeah.
scale, you need tech. If you need tech, you need tech people. Okay, fine.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah. So
Okay.
tech people, those first people I hired. Then the next thing you did was, you figured out like where you're going to get your customers from, right? And
Hmm.
obviously, the two ways that you can do it. You're either looking at an organic way, which is, you continue doing what you're doing, which is, talking to influencers, going on a more, below the line, type of stuff, which is like it's like BTL activities, like
Yeah.
go to theaters, go to schools, go to colleges, and do that kind of stuff. Or then you do more paid marketing, which is your Facebook, Google,
Sure.
and you promote ads and acquire users. So we developed a sort of balance between the two, and we started spending money on marketing, acquiring new users. Then the question is, how do you retain those users, right? So then you start developing the metrics around retention. So
Sure.
first there's acquisition metrics, then there's retention metrics, and now you've actually got a business, right? Because now
Hmm.
you're like you've got you've got people who are entering. So imagine like there's a funnel, right? And
Right.
the bottom of the funnel is where your sale is happening. And you've got various ways in which you're feeding this funnel, whether it's through Facebook, Google, all these organic ways. And
Right.
then you have to figure out how that user on your website is going to get to a sale, right? So how is
Sure.
he or she going to go down that funnel? So
Hmm.
that became sort of the biggest thing we became obsessed with at Pipabella, was the acquisition and retention funnel. And even till date, and a lot of e-commerce companies will have this kind of a funnel, but even till date, we think about things either as an acquisition funnel or a retention funnel.
Hmm.
And how do you develop activities around either one of those? So yeah, so that became a big learning for us from, I would say, maybe around 2015 to about 2018. At the
Okay.
same time, we were
So
also, so this was on the,
it sounds very sort of technical. It sounds very detail oriented. On the surface, it looks like you're just running this like really cool jewelry company which has all these amazing designs.
yeah.
But what I'm hearing, and a lot, for people who are listening, like what you see on the surface is this really fashionable, trendy jewelry company. This is the sort of backstage view, right? The backstage view is like really serious, technical, analytical approach to building businesses and really understanding the consumer psyche and really understanding your various marketing channels and seeing how those funnel through. So this looks like
Yeah.
a very sort of detail oriented approach to running the company. It's not just a like
Yeah, and
you
that was
started this
that was
fashion.
my yeah, that was my way of running it. And I think that's also because of my personality was a lot more about making sure that everything is data driven. So any
Sure.
decision you make had to be driven by, okay, show me where the numbers are. If it makes sense, then we'll do it. And
Sure.
if there was not enough proof around it, then we drop it. So it's not about, oh
Okay.
yeah, just so I think a lot of other entrepreneurs are very intuitive and they don't care so much about numbers. But this was at least my way of saying that, okay, it has to be backed by, and this is again business school education, right, coming in. So
Sure.
so I think that
Backed by
approach,
numbers. Okay.
yeah, backed
All
by
right.
numbers. And then at the same time, between 2015 and 2018, we were also working on our supply chain because we had,
Okay.
so we had to work on making sure, we were building our manufacturing capabilities, to handle the scale. We were also making sure that, we had, building relationships with vendors. We were automating
Okay.
some of those processes at the same time. So tech was playing a role not only on the front end, on the acquisition
Okay.
side, but
So,
also on the supply
on
chain.
the tech side, I'm curious to understand. I know you have a business background. You went to NYU and Wharton and stuff. And you run essentially, running an e-commerce business is essentially running a technology company, right?
Yeah.
So, do you, as a CEO founder, feel challenged in terms of, not really knowing how to code? Do you see that as a disadvantage, or do you see it as an advantage that I don't really you can easily sort of outsource and hire out the tech, but you can't really outsource this sort of managerial analytical thinking. So where are you on that spectrum?
Yeah, so I'm actually really glad I'm not a tech person. I
Okay.
think that if I were a tech person, I'd be micromanaging like my entire tech team like a lot.
Right.
And I think the fact that I don't understand tech has allowed me to delegate and trust
Right.
the tech team, and that's allowed me to kind of focus on the things that I'm really good at, and focus on the areas which are my strengths. So rather than trying to be in an area where I don't understand, or even try to develop my strengths there, I played to my strengths,
Sure.
um, and just delegated where I felt necessary. So I
But
actually don't think that. Yeah.
for someone who's considering starting up an e-commerce venture, do
Yeah.
you think not knowing technology is a disadvantage? Do you think not knowing technology is a skill set that they should quickly sort of lasp on, or is it okay? Do you feel okay running this?
Yeah, so look, I think that you have to, I don't think that, when you say not knowing technology, right? I think that if you're a complete tech dinosaur, like you don't know anything about technology at all, then I think, yes, you should spend a little bit of time, understanding it, right? Because there will be times when, whether you're in a VC meeting, or whether even if you're not raising funding and you're doing this on your own, where you will have to have discussions around technology with your team, or you
Sure.
will have to know where the limitations of technology, what the limitations of technology are, and where, how far technology can take you in terms of your business operation. So I think understanding that is important.
Sure.
But I don't think you need to be an expert for sure.
Okay.
I think that there are lots of resources now. And also, by the way, the tech world is evolving so fast, and there are new languages that come up every year, right? So
Hmm.
as an entrepreneur, it's
I
very
see.
difficult to keep
Okay.
in
Like
touch
like
with all of
when you
that.
started in 2012, had you hypothetically studied computer science, you would have obviously learned a very different with very different languages, different platforms.
Yeah,
So in any ways, the knowledge would have gotten sort of redundant. So unless you keep up with tech,
exactly,
okay.
exactly.
So the message I'm getting here for entrepreneurs is like if you want to jump into a technical business or e-commerce, etc., it's
Yeah,
okay to not know the nuances of technology as long as you understand basically how tech works.
yeah,
Okay, I'll
correct.
I'll quickly take a question here from Aditya Agarwal. Just I'm going to paraphrase this question in terms of like, when you started out, you were doing certain things, and like 8, 10, 12 years into the business, how do you see your role evolve? How are you
Yeah.
how are you managing then, and how are you managing now?
So back then I was doing I was getting myself involved in everything, and I still to some extent sometimes do that now today as well, especially like when you're troubleshooting and firefighting. But back
So
then, I think,
you're saying back then you had your hands in sort of everything, right? You would sort of
yeah. I
okay,
mean, you get your hands dirty in everything, and
sure.
I was at one point of time packing gifts and talking to
I
customers,
can, I
and
can, I can totally
yeah,
relate. Like you
yeah,
basically like because we're so quality conscious, and if we've
yeah,
got our name, sort of next to something, and if it's our own baby, we're just going to
yeah.
make sure that like, to the best of our abilities, nothing's going to go wrong. So this
Yeah,
sentiment I completely relate to.
yeah, and I think also the more you do things, one thing I realized is that when you're doing things on your like yourself, so as your CEO, as a founder, as an entrepreneur, you're always the most vested. You're going to be
Sure.
way more vested than your team is, right? So you're looking for efficient ways to do things. Your
Sure.
team, if you just tell them, hey, listen, this is your job, this is what you're supposed to do, they're just going to do that, right? I mean, not
Right.
everyone, but like a lot of people
Sure.
will. So as a result of it, as an entrepreneur, when you get involved in that process, you begin to understand, okay, where are things going wrong? Where are things falling apart? Where are they breaking? And then you can fix it,
Sure.
because you have that mentality of trying to fix it. And,
Okay.
and,
So
and, and I
initially
think,
you had your hands in pretty much everything.
yeah.
And then how did that evolve? How did that change over time? Or has it?
So it has, it definitely has. I think that I'm a lot more on the strategy side now. I think a lot more about larger picture stuff. I think a lot more about what is the goal? How are we going to execute on that goal? I think about the sort of 2 year, 3 year plan, whereas maybe 7, 8 years ago it was more about, okay, what is the 5 month plan? What is the 6 month
Sure.
plan? And
Okay.
so I think in that sense, that role has evolved quite a bit. Um, I also think a lot more today about culture and team building than I did maybe back in the day.
Okay.
Like what do we really stand for as a company? What is the brand? What is the philosophy? I think a lot of that comes in now, which before, you don't think about so much.
Okay.
Yeah,
So you went from like very sort of micro nitty-gritty managing the
yeah.
company to now thinking sort of big picture, 3-year vision, brand strategy, etc.
Yeah, and
Okay.
I mean, and I think your role it evolves, but it's you sometimes still have to be pulled back into that every day, right? Because you
Sure.
need to be in touch with what's happening on ground and the
Sure.
realities of things as well. So
Okay. So you get pulled into it time and again, but like
yeah,
largely you're saying that that's the role shift. Okay. I
yes,
hope that answered your question. We have a compliment from Kunal Nagyan who says, Shuji, you have a great team and you guys are doing a very good job. Thank you, Kunal, for your compliment.
thank you,
There's
Kunal.
been
Really
lots of
appreciate it.
compliments along the way about the collection and how much people love it. Gonna pick up a quick question here from Anika Tarika, who says, "Did you ever lose faith that your business wasn't growing or anything of that sort? Did you ever have sort of this moment of questioning where you were like, 'What am I doing and why?'"
Yeah, all the time.
All the time.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. I mean, if you want the honest answer, right? Like, I think entrepreneurs are like, I don't know, I know very few entrepreneurs who are like so self-confident that they know that they think
Sure.
that they're 100% sure of every single decision that they've made. Um, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of self-doubt, and the journey is filled with, am I doing this right? Do I have what it takes?
Right.
All of that. But I think what you know it's stuff like this, right? Like it's customers who say that I love the product, I love what you guys do, I love the collection. It kind of motivates you to keep going, right? And you feel like, okay, yeah, I've created something, then
Hmm.
let me go and do it, and let me build on it. It's kind of like building a wall, right? Like
Sure.
you're putting one brick, then you wake up the next day, you put another brick. You're not gonna build that wall overnight. You're not gonna build that structure overnight.
Hmm.
And every day you have to motivate yourself. Okay, let me just add one more. Let me just add one more. And you eventually get to a point where you're like, okay, now I feel good about things.
You can see that wall coming up finally.
Yeah, or that wall or structure or whatever it is that whatever that
Right.
vision you had in your head for something, you can see it coming in front of you. Whereas before, it takes effort, in the mornings to wake up and be like, oh yeah, I have to do this, even though like there's so much that I have to fix, and there's so many issues, and there's this and that, and you're
Sure.
like, oh, do I really have what it takes to do that? Like even with
Okay.
fundraising, for example, like I didn't think I had what it took at all to fundraise. And then, you
Hmm.
just build your confidence slowly, slowly, and you get there.
Okay, great. Anika, I hope that answered your question. She talked about it, right? Like it's natural to go through the highs and the lows and sort of the self-doubt, but you sort of brick by brick build yourself up there. Okay, I'm going to take a quick question here from Naam To Suna Hi Nahi Hoga, who says, as the founder of this popular brand, how do you maintain good relationships with all your consumers, considering that you have such a large customer base? Okay, I think this is a really good question.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about your customers and what's worked, what hasn't worked, what sort of issues are you still sort of struggling with, and how do you manage all of that, because this is really a consumer centric business.
Yeah, yeah. So I think with consumers, you have to maintain a very authentic voice. This is something we learned probably a little bit more recently, and I'll give you an example, right? Like with the law, for example, COVID, right? COVID has led to a whole bunch of issues, like in terms of getting the product to the consumer on time. And
Right.
it's not, and a lot of that is not, majority of that is actually not completely in our control, right? Because you give the product to a third party courier company, and then they take it to some city, and then that city suddenly goes into lockdown, and then you're not able to get the product to the customer. In situations like this, I think talking to the customer, preempting a situation, ensuring that the customer is well aware of the realities on ground, and being very honest about it. So I think having an
Okay.
authentic voice with your customer is super important, and I
Okay,
think
so
that's something that,
yeah, authentic voice, connectivity, sort of
yeah,
staying in touch and communicating, like keeping your channels
yes.
of communication open. Okay.
Yes, yes. And I think that, just being honest, right? I mean, if you're not able to do something, then, just be honest that, listen, I can't, this is not going to be possible. So, for example, one of the things we did was we were very short-staffed on our customer service, right? We said that,
Right.
how do we handle this? Because we have, all these orders that we have to service, but we can't we can't service all the customer service requests. So what we said was we actually decided as a 3 week, 4 week exercise to actually remove our voice service from customer service, right? So we said, okay, we're only going to take requests on WhatsApp. And we actually
Okay.
explained that to our customers, right? We said,
Hmm.
look, it's not that we don't want to talk to you or we're trying to avoid you. It's just genuinely that we're very short staffed. with COVID, a lot of our staff has gone away, and we actually had a whole
Right.
explanation for that.
Right.
And customers understood. And we said that, look, it'll take us 48 hours to get back to you, but we promise we'll get back to you.
Okay.
And so I think, it's just stuff like that, that I think if you communicate to your customers and you tell them these are the issues, they understand, right? So I think
Okay.
that's one of the things that really helps in connecting with the customer, building that authenticity
Okay.
in
So
your
you
voice. Yeah.
build trust, authenticity, keep the
Yeah.
lines of communication open, and
Yeah.
sort of you just relayed the honest truth, saying this is the situation, and we're
Yeah.
trying our best. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's bringing Shuchi to the business, just keeping this really authentic and real.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
A quick question here from, no, we have a compliment from Kunal again. Your customer support service is very friendly and they have a very friendly nature. So I really
That's
appreciate your
really sweet.
team. Okay,
That's
thank you,
really
Kunal.
sweet.
He's full of
Thank you,
praises
Kunal.
for
Yeah,
you.
that's really nice to hear.
Question from Anika again. What are some of the important things in terms of quality check? This is a good question. So, what kind
Yeah.
of quality check or QC do you do in this sort of business?
Yeah, so we have QC that happens at the production stage, which is the manufacturing stage,
Hmm.
and we have a second QC that happens before the dispatch takes place.
Hmm.
The production QC is at various stages of production. So, for example, if a product is going through, say, 5 stages, then typically a manufacturer will have a QC person at each of those 5 stages. And then
Okay.
finally, so that's one we just call it one big QC check. And then the second QC check actually happens internally at our warehouse, where we have one team that checks it before the product is dispatched. But one of the
Okay.
things actually we did, because I think just again being sort of entrepreneurial helped, is that we ended up training our entire warehouse to do QC, right? So, for example, what we found was that like even if, for example, we have a runner, right? And his job is to just basically collect pieces from the factory and bring it to the warehouse. We even taught him
Sure.
QC. So we said that,
Okay.
before you bring it to the warehouse, you do the QC.
Check
If
again.
you feel,
Okay.
yeah, check, right? So, and if it's not
Okay.
looking good to you, then don't take the piece from the factory. Right. So I think
Okay.
it's just, having that mentality that, okay, quality control, quality control, it doesn't have to just be one specific team who's doing it. Like, can everybody, learn how to look at something and see if it's working or not?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So it seems like very detailed QC.
Yeah.
Every stage of the production process, you're
Yeah.
saying, there is some sort of QC and checking.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Some comments coming up here about, are you hiring? There are some designers who want to work with you, and just
Yeah.
otherwise, is there some sort of hiring policy or something you want to just tell people
So
about so they
please,
can reach out
yeah,
to
so
you?
please email us at on marketing@pipabella.com. We actually have this really interesting platform that we're building out for jewelry designers. We know that India is a country which is filled with jewelry design talent. And I've seen this firsthand, even in my previous work with my family business. And so we're building out a really interesting platform that's going to showcase jewelry designers and allow them to display some of their designs. And if an opportunity comes up, we will also create some of those designs for our website. And it's going to be a very democratic platform that I think everyone will get access to, completely, none of that subscription stuff. So we're very excited about it. It's probably going to launch in the next 2 months. So please email
Wow.
us on marketing@pipabella.com, and we will keep you updated about that.
Okay, awesome. So for all the designers in the house, definitely reach out to them because I mean everyone knows the reach of the brand that Shuchi has built. So this could really sort of place you out there. Quick question here from Sabahat, who asks, who inspires you? Do you have someone who inspires you, someone you look up to, a mentor or someone?
Um, oh my gosh, so many people inspire me. I don't have one particular person, but I think that like from a business point of view, I think that there are certain business leaders in India, like Ratan Tata, for example. He really inspires me. I think that the way he always puts the community first. I think before his own needs, and especially what he's done with the Tata brand, and made and built that idea of trust. Tanishq, for example, is a Tata brand, and it's
Sure.
a jewelry brand, and I've always loved it, loved the way they have that trust factor
Sure.
in their
Hmm.
brand. And even though for me it's like it's not a competitor really because it's in the bridal jewelry space,
Sure.
uh, but I always look at that and think, one day, I would like my customers to also think,
Have
like,
that level of trust,
yeah, I
right?
have that level of trust, right? That pipa wala
Hmm.
hai, to like nothing, like trust hai, like koi problem nahi hai.
Sure.
So,
Hmm.
I mean, Ratan Tata, I'd say, probably hands down. There are a lot of others,
Okay.
but, from a business perspective, yeah.
Sure. Okay. Uh, Make an illustration. How did you get an idea to start People Better? She already answered this. I think you might have joined late, but if you watch the entire IGTV video, we'll have it up on the Reach IV page so you can watch it later. But she did talk about, how jewelry and People Better. So if you don't mind, make an illustration, just catch that conversation there. I want to touch a little bit about on the pandemic and COVID. And I remember talking to you, let's rewind, let's say 5, 6 years ago. And I remember a lot of your manufacturing and your largely your supply chain came from China.
Yeah.
And when we spoke this afternoon, you told me that you've completely sort of sidelined the China manufacturing. It's less than 10% of your business.
Yeah, yeah,
Can you
yeah.
tell a little bit, talk a little bit about the manufacturing? Has
Yeah,
COVID affected their supply chain? What is going
yeah.
on, and how are businesses such as yours managing COVID? Yeah, Anika, that's exactly the question. Has COVID affected your
Yeah,
business? That's it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, so I think that basically, I mean, COVID is COVID has affected everybody, right? I think it's a
Yeah.
tough time. But I think that in terms of so I think the China India thing. Look, I think China it was getting difficult to do business with China. That's for sure. And I think that uh, from a variety of different aspects. I think one is that the product is very generic. And I don't think that it's like a lot of the designs are suited for the Indian aesthetic. I think Indian
Okay.
women have a very specific aesthetic on the product side. I think quality is a big issue in China. It's very like the kind of metal used is very cheap. Indian manufacturers actually use a slightly more expensive metal, but it is much better in terms of quality. And so it was a very strategic decision to move all manufacturing to India. We've moved now 90% to India. Only small 10% remains in China. And even that actually we want to move to India very soon. So we want to be
Okay.
100% made in India brand in the next
Wow. Okay.
in this next 1 year. Yeah. Yeah, and so like we're all about that vocal for local
Wow.
concept,
Okay.
and I think that
And you don't think in terms of like your cost structure or anything, it's, because the philosophy I remember talking 5, 6 years ago was like, obviously we get our product from China, it's much cheaper.
yeah,
But
yeah.
that
No,
philosophy
I
seems
don't.
to have
I don't think
evolved.
so. I don't think so. I think that Indian manufacturers can meet your price points. And I think that they're actually easier to work with. Indian
Right.
manufacturers are really understanding the tastes and the kind of quality and the kind of finish that I'm looking for. And whereas I think China, there's always that little bit of a language barrier. There's a little bit of that.
Sure.
Oh, there is. Also, I think that the way they work is very different in terms of the payments. They want full upfront payments, which is difficult when you're a
Sure.
company
Okay.
that has to import. So all of those things are issues. And yeah, I think with COVID, I mean, it's become even more relevant, right? Because I think with
Sure.
COVID, the whole, I mean, even with Modi talking about self-reliance, I mean, it's really
Hmm.
relevant for businesses, right? I think that you begin to realize that as a business, you have to be self-reliant. You can't rely on imports to run to run your business. And like right now, China imports are completely like they're
They're
like not
banned,
happening.
essentially.
Yeah,
Right. Okay.
And so I think in that sense, it just having your own manufacturing setup, having your own, having something local is way better
Okay.
than importing. And
Okay.
pandemic, yes, COVID has not affected our demand actually. In fact, I think that being an e-commerce company, people want contactless deliveries, right? So people don't have the ability right now to go to retail stores and to buy jewelry. And I think people prefer
People are
just
just
shopping
shopping
from,
online now. Okay.
yeah, people prefer shopping from the comforts of their home, right?
Okay.
And so I think we haven't seen a drop in demand at all. In fact, we are probably at somewhere around 50-60% of pre-COVID levels already. And we
Okay,
expect to
nice.
be at about 100% by the end of this year. So we
Okay.
actually don't see that demand factor being compromised. I
Okay.
think on the supply side, yeah, probably logistical delays, things like that is where some issues would come in.
Where some issues might pop up. Okay,
Yeah.
great. I have a question here from Shalini Goenka who says, just in terms of the business model, were there any international companies or brands that inspired you to, did you model this after a company you saw? Like, you're talking a little bit about the companies in America. So are
Yeah,
there
yeah.
any international brands or companies that,
So no, not really. I mean, not. So I think that we basically took a little bit from a lot
uh,
of different companies in terms of the business model. So what we said was that, okay, like I think the US has done a really good job of building D2C brands, which is direct to consumer brands. So rather than looking at a brand that is just a Myntra brand or a Amazon brand, right, where you're only selling and getting your revenue through an Amazon, can you can you create a direct channel with the customer? And I
uh,
think a lot of US companies have done a fabulous job doing that. Whether it's there's a company called Bonobos, which is a menswear line. There's a company
uh,
called, yeah, this company called Walk.
You could have just used their distribution networks and not bothered with building your own sort of e-tailing
Yeah,
network. But okay, I
correct,
see.
correct. Yeah, so
Okay.
I think that a lot of Indian brands still rely on an Amazon
On
or a
Amazon and Flipkart and
Flipkart,
okay,
and I
right.
think that again, that's where, you have to take a call, right? And
Hmm.
we said that, we want to be direct to consumer. And
Sure.
and that's where I think the inspiration from the US came. So there's, a brand like Warby Parker, for example,
I see.
which is a, eyewear brand in the US, and they're very much focused on direct to consumer. And so
Okay.
I
Okay.
think it's a lot of
Okay. So
different,
that's a
yeah,
lot of elements. Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. So someone had a question here about, expansion plans. So we've got the story from like 2012 to 2020.
Yeah.
What's the next decade looking like? What's on your mind since you've now moved to sort of more vision and sort of forward thinking?
Yeah, yeah.
What's on your mind? How are you seeing the next decade panning out?
So I think technology would play a big role in the next decade for us. We're going to do some. I think in the next couple of years, we're going to do a lot of cool stuff around, augmented reality
Oh,
and machine learning coming into part of the entire ecosystem in the conversion funnel that we talked about. So I think
mm,
technology would play a big role. I think what we want to look at in the next few years is actually becoming more of an omni-channel brand. So thinking about how can we increase our presence? How can we increase the access of the brand to places where the access is not possible, right? So since we've already focused a lot on the demand side and on the customer acquisition side, how can we make sure that the brand gets to as many places as possible? That's going to be the area of focus for us. So whether that's offline stores, partnering with existing retailers, creating partnership opportunities, distribution opportunities for us, either through franchising or our own, distributionship. All of
okay.
those questions are now going to come into play over the
Okay.
next few. Yeah,
So broadly, it's like sort of expanding the consumer base
yeah,
and really deep diving into metrics to understand your customer better and better through,
yeah.
of course, machine learning and augmented reality and things like that. Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is like some
There's
serious
some cool
strategy.
stuff
Wow.
out there, like there's some really cool stuff in terms of what brands can do these days. And I think consumers are like sort of lapping it all up. So
Sure.
it's a great time to be in the e-commerce business for sure.
Okay, great. Okay, so Insta's giving me this sort of 2-minute countdown. So I want to make sure I get enough time to thank you. Firstly, guys, thanks all of you for tuning in. Lots and lots of questions today. Lots of compliments going towards Pipa and Bella today as well. Thank you all for tuning in and for all your questions. And of course, guys, as you know, Pipa and Bella is fully functional and open and running. They have all their designs up on their website. So most of you are already customers of theirs, but do check out their collection and support the brand. These are tough times for everyone. So if you like their designs, you like their styles, definitely go out and make your next purchase this weekend. Thank you, Suji, for
Vibha, you're
always
so awesome.
adding.
You're like I'm gonna make you my next brand ambassador. Like you're you're
I,
like the
I
perfect
am your brand
spokesperson.
ambassador.
Yeah, you're like the perfect spokesperson. That
I'm totally your brand ambassador. I
yeah.
will make sure I put on one of your pieces next time for my show.
Yeah, I'm sending
But
you stuff next time for sure.
totally, I'm
Yeah.
totally a big fan. I'm a big fan, not just
Yeah.
of your brand, but of you as well. So thank you so
Likewise. I
much.
mean, yeah, our conversations are, and our coffee date is pending. Once this
Coffee day
lockdown
spending for sure.
ends, we're gonna do that. So,
But really remarkable, Shuji. I'm really inspired, and of course, I'm super proud. With what you have done, it's a tough category to break into. It's a tough category to build out, and you did it all. It's
thank
just
you.
8 years, so you have a cool 20, 30 years coming up. But just fabulous. So thank you so much for
Thank
sharing
you.
all your
Thank you
tidbits with
so
us,
much.
and thank you. So if you
Thanks a
want to just
lot.
end, you can just end.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Vibha. Take care.
Okay, thank you. Thank you guys for tuning in. Guys, we have next session coming up with a flamenco dancer from India who actually went to Spain to study flamenco, and she's the pioneer of flamenco dancing here in India, coming up next Saturday. Are there any fields that you guys really want to learn about? Feel free to put it here in the chat or send us a message on Reach IV. And I hope you guys are enjoying the House of Experts sessions. We're really trying our best to bring you, experts from various domains. And for anyone who's still trying to figure out their careers and trying to understand, who they are and where they are on this journey for themselves, we've organized. I actually am going to personally conduct goal setting workshops starting this Saturday for 3 consecutive Saturdays. I have this Saturday coming up for high school students, 8 to 12 graders. Next Saturday is for college students, and Saturday, August 16th, is for young professionals. So for anyone who's keen on goal setting for themselves and figuring out, who they are and where they want to be, please make sure you reach out to our team and sign up for